What's good? What's good? What's good, y'all? Welcome to the Suckapunch podcast, episode 4. Shout out to everybody in the boxing community. Shout out to the Lions Den boxing community. Shout out to everybody who is a hardcore fan. Shout out to all the casual fans. I am your host. I'll get to these comments in a minute, but I'm your host, Fight Critic. And thank you for joining me in. Those of you who are joining live, those of you who will watch this as an archive. And happy Sunday, right before MLK Day. Really cold over here in New York, starting to dip into the single digits. Usually Sunday is my lazy day, like I normally say, but I overslept Tuesday morning. So I really couldn't get into my morning workout. So I ended up having to go into the gym today. Today was my heavy leg day. Normally my heavy leg day is on Saturdays, in which I consist of doing some heavy squats, some heavy leg presses. And then I kind of finish things off with a kind of some finishers that are more designed for certain muscle parts. So some side lateral raises, some lying leg curls, stuff like that. I even do some hip thrusts at times as well, just so that you can get that high sort of hamstring, right underneath where the glute is. But that's just me trying to take out through my Sunday. I also see my chiropractor on Sunday because I regularly go to the chiropractor. I also believe that in order to make sure your body's healthy, you need to go to the right type of people who are normally known for fixing people when it comes to them having bone and nerve issues. Going to the chiropractor and having myself getting a diagnostic done about twice a month keeps my body fresh, keeps my body healthy, especially going to the gym. The gym disrupts so much in your range of motion. So for me, going to the chiropractor keeps my body fresh a lot of the times. In fact, I kind of salute a lot of my recent success as far as physically to my chiropractor. He's really helped me change things around my body-wise, especially because last year around this time, I was still suffering from a lot of plantar fascia from Muay Thai. Had a lot of issues with my shoulder. I'm always going to have issues with my shoulder considering that I have shoulder tendonitis. I'm not going to talk to y'all about how I got it, but going to the chiropractor helps alleviate a lot of those issues. So for me, it's good, especially right now with the weather being so cold as it is and it dropping down as much as possible. Especially here in Brooklyn, it's the weather's something, and it's gonna hit on the single digits tomorrow for sure. So even though it's MLK Day, me getting up, 4:30, 4:45 as usual to go do my workout, I'm expecting it to be the same way. But shout out to all of y'all already started in the group chat. Shout out to Robert Stewart. Shout out to P Money. P Money's been around for a long time, watching a lot of our videos. So shout out to you, bro. 81 degrees in Arizona. That's lovely. I'm not gonna lie, 85 is my tipping point as a person. I think if the weather's above 85, I get annoyed. I feel like if the weather's below 20, I'm annoyed. So between 20 and 85, I'm usually good with any of those temperatures. I was thinking about going to Arizona this year, but with the fucking government shutdown, I'm not getting on a plane anytime soon. Fuck what you heard. I'm not going through security if TSA is looking like the way it looks right now. I'm just being honest with you. Even though I'm not the biggest fan of TSA, and I do everything possible not to have to deal with them when I fly out, considering the amount of trips that I do take per year. I try to take at least 4 trips a year. A lot of the equipment that I bring with me just in the things that I do outside of here, I prefer to have them hand check it. And a lot of times when you go through hand check at TSA at the airport, you got to fucking realize that a lot of those people, they're not used to going through hand checks, considering the lot of technology that exists. So when you get a hand check, it often pulls somebody off that line. TSA is probably a mess, especially in New York. Flying out of JFK, I prefer LaGuardia because LaGuardia has a lot of the lounges that I go to. But flying out, especially in a fast-paced city like New York, big airports, a lot of people coming in and out. It's not as busy as a lot of airports around the country. But going through that and seeing how that kind of unfolds, it's only going to make, more problems if I sit there and ask a motherfucker that's not getting paid to do his job, like, yo, I need a hand check on this bag. So until TSA is up and running, until the government is back up and running, I'm not taking any flights. I also can't get my fucking pre-check. I have my application going through for global entry, so I can bypass like immigration and TSA and all that shit. But it's funded by a government building. So because of that, I can't fucking do it. My application is pending right now. So those are my daily problems that I have to deal with. But outside of that, let's talk about what unfolded the last week. There's a lot of things that I want to talk about today. I do want to give you guys a little bit of a curriculum. If you haven't seen me post the curriculum to my Twitter page at all times, you should be following me at Fight Critic. That is my Twitter handle, and I do talk the most shit throughout the week on there. And if you guys have any questions that you want to have me answer on the podcast or reply to in a tweet, send all your questions to fightcritic@gmail.com. No spaces, no hyphens, no special characters. I'm just going to get this comment real quick. P Money says, I feel you. New York has some insane TSA rules, and rightfully so, but I know the government shutdown has them looking real bare. Border Patrol is real light over here in Arizona. I would assume that, man. New York is crazy when it comes to traveling and how much security we got to go through. For me, I don't mind going through that much security because I know at the end of the day, I'm not a fucking flight risk. I'm usually held within, what I want to do. And I got fucking priority pass. By the time I get after security, I'm not trying to sneak nothing in. I go to the fucking Black Card Lounge and get everything for free there. I go to the fucking Delta Sky Lounge if I fly out of Delta and I get access to it. I'm usually doing pre-boarding anyway. I just need this shit to end so I could get my global entry so I could just go to the quick line at TSA. But yeah, I can only imagine how Border Patrol is, man. And I know a lot of people, they're really testing TSA. I don't know, not really in New York, but I know for the Super Bowl it will, because the Super Bowl is going to be in Atlanta. And I listen to Bomani Jones's podcast. If you don't get a chance to, go listen to Bomani Jones's podcast. It's called The Right Time with Bomani Jones. And he talks about how Atlanta's airport is the busiest airport in the country. And if the Saints make the Super Bowl in Atlanta, that's already a lot. But considering how TSA is looking, that could be really bad. So I can only imagine what it's like in other places in the world if it's that way. People traveling in and out because of professional sports over in Europe, and how that Border Patrol and how that looks, and how it's dictating things based on how the U.S. is and how our government is, because you have people who are flying out of the U.S. still flying internationally. They now have to be on the tipping scale to say, whoa, you just flew out of a country whose government is shut down. We need to extremely vet you before we let you into this country. But yeah, that's how I'm feeling right now when it comes to it. Outside of that, let's just go real quickly. I'm going to break down what we will cover, in this podcast. We're going to talk about this weekend's fights. I am going to give you my opinion on the Pacquiao versus Broner fight. I do want to talk a little bit about heavyweights with Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury in their purse bid. I am going to answer the stupid comment that I've seen of the week, which will be talking about Bernard Hopkins' legacy in comparison to Floyd Mayweather and Manny Pacquiao. I'm also going to talk about Canelo versus Jacobs. Of course, this week was the week of remembrance for the great Muhammad Ali and remembering his birthday. And then last but not least, we will talk about the man of the hour, Sergey Kovalev, and the recent trouble that he's been into. But first, let's start with the weekend fight wrap-ups. We had fights all the way from Friday to yesterday. For me, the big fights that kind of stood out for me were the Bryant Jennings versus Oscar Rivas fight, in which it was an upset, It was a fight that Jennings was winning through and through. And then Oscar Rivas, who pretty much has been the same style type of fighter, kind of just gutted it out and found the home run punch in the 12th round, knocked Jennings down, and Jennings looked about spent on the knockdown, and then managed to stay in there, hang in there, and then stop Jennings. I'm pissed because I really wanted to put money on this fight. I'd been watching Oscar Rivas fight for about 2 or 3 years now, and he just seemed to be a guy who never could get the better fight because he's often had an eye issue that he hasn't had cleared by the commissions. So anytime he's had a really good opponent or a really good step-up fight, the commission for some reason has always turned him away because they don't feel like he's safe enough to fight because he's had eye problems. So in steps Bryant Jennings, who has been on somewhat of a comeback trail since he signed with Top Rank. He was signed to Gary Shaw's promotions before. At one point, he was going to be a part of that big Rock Nation promotion when it was Gary Shaw and Rock Nation coming together. But with Bryant Jennings, after the Luis Ortiz loss, he had to take a couple fights here and there, got with Bob Arum and Top Rank, and made himself back up. Shout out Reef. Quick shout out to Reef real quick in the chat. But moving forward with the Jennings-Rivas fight, I just think they underestimated Oscar Rivas. Rivas has always been a decent prospect in the heavyweight division. He's just never had that real kind of shining fight yet, and it's because he hasn't been cleared for it. So in steps Oscar Rivas, definitely the betting underdog. I looked at his odds, and I was like, yo, these are really good odds for Rivas. I don't know if I'm going to take it, and I let it slide. I could have I was going to take it by knockout. I don't want to sit there and, Monday morning quarterback it. But I really did feel the Rivas by upset by knockout. And I know a lot of people are going to sit there and they'll be like, oh, you're probably just talking shit or whatever. Trust me, if you really do want proof behind this, talk to my boy MBT Boxing. He will let you know how much I was talking to him privately about this fight and like, yo, I really like Rivas' chances. But it didn't happen. But I thought what was really interesting was that Bob Arum this week, Bob Arum usually gets into his petty shit usually when it's fight week and it involves a lot of Heyman guys. And and he talks about the aspect to Al Heyman not allowing his fighters to fight under different promotions, different shows, so on and so forth. Not like we gotta fucking remind him that he just announced the fight with Amir Khan, and the fact that Oscar Rivas himself is a fighter who has links to Al Heyman, whether it be as an advisor or a manager. I don't get this delusion by Arum. I just think it's old age. I think he just clearly is just saying shit because he knows that Al Heyman ain't going to call up 25 boxing media people and surround themselves to do an interview and talk shit. That's not the way Al Heyman rolls. He has people who speak for him. I don't think they do the best to clarify their position when it comes to talking to him. But every single person that I've watched an interview with that has had a personal one-on-one with Al Heyman, they've never turned around and they've never said shit like this. Bob Arum has had to consistently be on the opposite side of the negotiation table with Al Heyman. So of course he's going to speak that way with him. He can't make money off of Al Heyman, but Al Heyman is going to make some money off of him. Usually when you put guys in that position, it pisses him off. Arum's been waiting to make money off of Al Heyman. You just can't. But for Bryant Jennings, I think this is probably the end of the road for homie. I think for Jennings moving forward, he'll probably continue to get a couple of quick filler fights, but I think that this type of loss for him is probably going to be the hardest one because it was a fight that he was winning. All he had to do was stay on his feet for 3 minutes. And he let Rivas back into it. And, maybe this does lead to a rematch. Maybe this does put some perspective on things that maybe Jennings wants to get this one back psychologically. And, of course, to avenge a loss because he's yet to avenge a loss on his actual resume. But I think for his age, I think for the fact that, this is the type of fight that kind of discourages a lot of fighters. I don't know what kind of fighter he'll be moving forward. For Oscar Rivas on the flip side, sky's the limit almost. He was at a point where he was pressure is either going to bust pipes or it's going to make diamonds. And that's usually the figure of speech I got to put it when it comes to guys like Rivas. You know, the talent is there. You know, the appeal is there. The promotion is not quite there because the guy can't fucking get a big fight because of these commissions turning him down because of the way that he was perceived to be physically. But maybe this kind of loosens up those restrictions. Maybe this makes the boxing commissions a little bit more lenient because he's going to probably get a big fight pretty soon. And I don't know if it's going to come across, you know, the lights of the top 10 heavyweights in the division or the very top of the top 10 heavyweights, but it's going to give him a different and a unique look at things. Another big upset from this weekend was Jorge Linares got knocked the fuck out inside of a round by Pablo Cesar Cano. Now, a lot of people know Pablo Cesar Cano from him getting robbed versus Paulie Malignaggi. This was a couple of years ago, and the guy pretty much was just never on the radar since. In steps Jorge Linares, who, in my opinion, he was a 23-1 favorite, I think. Yet somehow, I don't know what it is about basic-ass Mexican fighters when it comes to Jorge Linares, but them shits are his kryptonite. This is like the third guy that he's knocked that's knocked him out in less than, what, 2 rounds that has been a borderline average, you know, mid-tier guy. And Jorge Linares, for some reason, he just doesn't do well against average Mexican fighters who can punch. You know, it's like he all of a sudden doesn't realize that he can slip punches. You know, he got cracked behind the ear, and then from that point on, he just couldn't recover. And just to give you some perspective on things, Jorge Linares is perceived to be the best win on Vasyl Lomachenko's resume. He is now also perceived to be the best win on Pablo Cesar Cano's resume. Those 2 fights are only 8 months apart. A lot of people have to realize that. This isn't some washed up Linares 3-4 years down the line. He fought Lomachenko 8 months ago. And now he just got absolutely destroyed in a round versus a guy who many people wouldn't even put in their top 20 in the division, top 30, 40. It's really, really interesting how like this kind of comes all together. And the goal was to take Linares's you know, almost seemingly win and to put him in a fight with Maurice Hooker that Eddie Hearn can promote on the zone in a very good way and fashion. Because of all this, I think they had footage of Hearn, and they had footage of Hearn. They also had footage of Maurice Hooker watching Jorge Linares get destroyed. And the look on Hearn's face was like, what the fuck? Like, you know that, give me 1 second. All right, cool. You know that look on your face when you just got the deer in headlights look? And Hearn almost seemingly tends to make that pose look infamous when you know he's either in front of Darrell Miller or when a fighter that he wasn't expecting to loses. He looked pretty shook. He was just like, what the fuck just happened? And you know, credit to Cano, because Cano, he's pretty much at a point now. He's just like, hey, I got this win. I'm the mandatory challenger, you know, for a title. I think he's the mandatory challenger now for Jose Ramirez. Jose Ramirez is gonna destroy him, but you know, he took a big opportunity and he beat a guy who a lot of people were praising, you know. But hey, so much for that. For Jorge Linares, it's a wrap for him, in my opinion. I don't think there's anything more that Jorge could do. I thought it was just a matter of time before he would have gotten destroyed at this division because he's fighting at 140 pounds. I didn't expect against no fucking Cano, but you know, credit to Cano, whatever you want to fucking call it. But yeah, that's really bad. And last but not least, not necessarily to talk about this fight, but just to keep it on your radar. But let me lean in real quick and adjust this microphone so you guys can hear me a little bit better. That boy Shakur Stevenson is going to be a problem, bro. And I know a lot of us early on when he first turned pro, a lot of us wanted to see what he's doing now back then, but he's found it. He's really starting to grow into himself. He's sitting down on his punches. He's making the opposition look foolish. And for a prospect of his potential and his hype coming in as a pro, he is now starting to live up to it. And for me, I do have a special request of Shakur. I would like for him to spend at least a week or a camp with Derrick James, because I feel like that would be the icing, the cherry on top as far as a fighter of his mechanics, and putting him in with a guy like Derrick James, who is very, very skillful at teaching southpaws on how to sit down better on their punches and how to push the pace and pressure. I'm not discrediting Shakur's corner right now. I just think that as he learns to become better and mature more and seeks out, I think he should seek out a guy like Derrick James. But inside the ring, I give Shakur another year before I think he's ready for a title holder. I know he talks about he wants a title this year. He wants to challenge Warrington. Easy. Don't try to bite off more than you can chew. We've seen this happen with other guys who have got a lot of attention, who were standout amateurs the same way, and they had that first big step up, and it discouraged them. I don't want an Erickson Lubin situation to happen to Shakur Stevenson. But what I do believe is, I believe that what he's doing right now, the amount of maturity that he's shown, he's not arguing with people on fucking Twitter anymore. He's doing his best to keep himself out of trouble. I haven't heard his name in the news, so that's good. His team is guiding him in the right path. And I think that coming out of the Olympics, a lot of people, they were stuck on, this two-headed giant signing that Arum did when he signed not only Michael Conlan, but also Shakur Stevenson. And a lot of people put a lot of their early stock into Michael Conlan. And let me just tell you right now, Shakur Stevenson is not only better than Michael Conlan, but he's levels above Michael Conlan right now. And maybe that's the fight that Arum builds to kind of figure out who should he invest more time into, because Conlan is a big recognizable name that he can promote. But Shakur is the guy who has all the talents, and he's the guy who's the better fighter. Arum is pretty much in an Oscar Floyd type of situation. Let's just hope for this time he makes the right call and not the wrong ones. Let's talk about yesterday's main event. Before we get into all that, a lot of the pre-build up to it, but the first thing I do want to acknowledge, one of my favorite fighters yesterday really did not have a good fight, and that was Badou Jack. All credit to Badou for finishing the fight, but it was really bad watching him go through that fight. I'm not even gonna lie to you. I thought early on, it looked a little tense in there. I think I could have found 2 rounds out of the first 6 to give to Badou. And that's me really trying to give him, some rounds. But after that midpoint, and, once the cut happened, it was all Marcus Brown. And maybe that would have gave Marcus Brown more incentive to step on the gas and try to finish things. Because once as a fighter, once you see a guy, hurt, bloodied, he can't see, blood is going in his face, I would just start fucking letting the fucking chopper sing. I would have threw everything at him, including the kitchen sink, and I would have threw the fucking boiler system at him. I would have threw everything at him. I would have unleashed hell. But Marcus Brown stayed in his bag. He stuck to the principles that got him to where he was at in that fight, and he felt content in outboxing Badou Jack. And he did impressive body work to Jack, something that I haven't seen anybody else do. Not even Adonis Stevenson was able to execute that much body attack against Badou Jack. Both guys had about the same reach, but Marcus Brown was always first. Badou Jack not only had to fight an opponent in which he's having a difficult time getting in on the inside to really get a handle of it, he's also fighting with the fact that his head was fucking split open. And that cut was bad. You could see flesh. That's how fucking bad that cut was. And I thought his corner did a shitty job. Lou Duval, look, he's done a great job with Jack, the last couple of fights, but this fight was really bad. This was one of those fights where Duvall had every opportunity to call that fight off and keep that cut from being as severe as it was, and he chose not to. He chose to neglect every aspect to it. And when you neglect that shit, you lead your fighter into worse harm. Now, luckily for us, I saw the stitches on Badu Jack's face afterwards, and it looked like the doctors did a really good job. Actually, they actually stitched that shit up pretty well. I thought for a second that they were just gonna have to put gauze in it and then let tissue grow underneath, considering how much blood he lost. But you know, athletes pay for some high profile shit. Chances are they put something artificial in there that'll dissolve over time and, you know, allow some tissue to regrow up and seal that cut. But I don't think Badu Jack is fighting for another year. For Badu Jack, this was yet another impressive run for him. Since 2015, since he upset Anthony Darrell, he's fought every guy in front of him has been a guy that's been ranked in his division. He's a guy, in my opinion, who deserves a gimme fight in his next fight when he comes back from this cut. He's 35, but, you know, he didn't really look like he was slowing down or he looked old. Just didn't have the right game plan. And then on the flip side, he was dealing with that fucking cut. But I think Badu Jack is going to still be a really good challenger for anybody else in the division. It just wasn't his night against Marcus Brown. And for Marcus Brown, I believe he now is mandated to not only get a fight with Dimitri Bivol, but I also think he's also mandated for another light heavyweight in the division as well. I'll have to keep tabs on that. I think it's for Alexander Vosdik as well. So Marcus Brown got a couple of options. You know, where will he go? Who knows? I mean, the guy had a lot of run-ins with the law. He has to get that situation solved before I think he moves past any of it. I do believe that he can probably get himself a fight against Vosdik, considering that more than likely he'll go to a purse bid. Aram's already lost a purse bid with Vosdik, so I think that might be the easier route to go through for Marcus Brown. Now, let's move on to Adrian Broner and Manny Pacquiao. Now, leading up to that fight weekend, a lot of details came out and, you know, what our, you know, expectations were. The first one was Adrian Broner's behavior towards Al Bernstein. This is nothing new. This is what Adrian Broner does. This is the person that he is. He is a real piece of shit outside of the boxing ring when it comes to other people having the ability to be constructively criticized, to give him constructive criticism. He is not well prepared for constructive criticism. He responds to shit the way that hood niggas respond to constructive criticism. If you criticize me, cool, but can you beat my ass? That is the way that Adrian Broner responds to shit. If you are going to talk about me, you should be ready to fight me. Now, granted, that shit is a little bit more, you know, it's let's just say that it's a lot easier to move through it if you are not a fighter with registered hands. But for somebody who's registered hands, who gets paid millions of dollars to shorten the lifespan of other people, to talk about the regular everyday person like this, and albeit Al Bernstein, who doesn't bother not one fucking person, come on, man. It's really not that necessary. You know, Al has been doing this for what, 40 years? Al never had beef with nobody. This ain't Larry Merchant, who fucking has beef with every fucking black fighter possible. This isn't anybody else but Al Bernstein. You wanna have beef with Al Bernstein? Come on, man. I don't get it. But for Broner, of course, you know, he always is going to talk up a big game. He's always doing this because he wants to be the center of attention. He wants to promote a fight because he knows all it's going to do is lead to his next fight, him talking shit. And of course, you know, with the talking and the fact that this was on pay-per-view, a lot of people have made investments into Adrian Broner. Many people thought that he could win this fight. Wasn't me, but many people thought that he could win this fight on paper. It wasn't going to happen, but many people did. A lot of the fighters who are with PBC that genuinely care for Adrian Broner picked him. I don't know why, but that's what they wanted to do. I picked Pacquiao. I didn't think it was a difficult pick at all. I said from the jump, I liked Pacquiao in this fight. But hey, many people wanted to go with that route. Now, leading up to that fight, we also got some information as far as money. So The guarantees at the Nevada State Athletic Commission was Pacquiao was due to get at least 10 million, with Adrian Broner expecting 2.5 million. Now, these numbers, rushed everybody out of the gates to ask a lot of questions. Mostly was the fact that it was also later news that Pacquiao's upside potential was $25 million. God damn. And then Adrian Broner was expected to make close to $5 million. God damn. But when that initial report came out of 2.5 compared to the 10, it brought out some very, very interesting individuals. One just happens to be an announcer and analyst for Top Rank, Christina Poncher. Now, I have no beef with Christina Poncher. I actually like her. I think she's good for the betterment of boxing. She seems to know a lot of content. But I don't think it's Christina's place to be talking about Adrian Broner's purse. Because in her tweet, we all knew common knowledge that Bob Arum offered Adrian Broner more money to fight Manny Pacquiao a couple years ago. I believe he had offered Broner something like $4 million to fight. And Christina took the 2.5 as an opportunity to dish out a shot. Now, I'm cool with you dishing out a shot, especially because I would dish out a shot as well. I'm like, yo, Broner's going to make less money for this. Interesting. But then you also got to think about the fact that this is also Bob Arum making a deal. And I didn't respond to this because I wanted to wait to speak about this to y'all, because y'all are probably going to understand this more than fucking Twitter. But I don't think it was smart for her to sit there and try to compare deals where Adrian Broner fighting under Top Rank's banner making $4 million versus Adrian Broner, the independent fighter, making $2.5 million with an upside to $5 million. And the reason why I don't think it was the right place to talk about is because we know for a fact Bob Arum asking another high-profile fighter to fight under his banner means one of two things. You either going to sign a deal with me to let me promote you for a couple fights, or you going to sign away a couple of rights to your fights to me anyway. That is how Arum tends to work. He's not going to offer you big money unless you give him an incentive to latch onto you. As well as the fact is, Arum is still going to take 30% of that check. Adrian Broner don't got to give up Arum fights. Adrian Broner doesn't have to give up rights to his fights. And he damn sure ain't going to give up 30%. So, of course, Adrian Broner is going to take the side that's going to give him 2.5 with an upside to 5, because he's going to be able to make that money as his own person, in comparison to fighting under Bob Arum's promotion, where he would be deducted for a promoter's fee. He would also either have to sign on to Top Rank, because that's what Bob Arum does, or give up rights to his fights for the next couple of fights, because that's also what Bob Arum does. This usually tends to be a common theme amongst guys who are not with Top Rank that have to get fights under Top Rank, especially for Manny Pacquiao. Because Shane Mosley had to fucking give up stake in Golden Boy Promotions to sign a deal for Manny Pacquiao. He had to be a Top Rank fighter to sign to fight Manny Pacquiao all those years ago. Not a lot of people talk about that shit. A lot of people always ask that question of, what happened with Shane and Golden Boy? What happened to Shane and Golden Boy? Bob Arum is what happened. What's up, Ticket? Shout out to Ticket TV. But yeah, I thought it was kind of interesting that Christina would say something like that. And then on the flip side, nobody's talking about the fact that Manny Pacquiao got paid handsomely for this fight, and the fact that not many people were really happy about it. Why are people not happy that Manny Pacquiao finally got himself a $25 million payday? I'm trying to make sense of that. This is a guy who hasn't fought in the U.S. in, 2 years because he can't fight here because of tax issues? Tax issues that were caused under Bob Arum? And then he's saying, hey, I need at least this kind of money if you want me to take these fights. And yeah, we drag Pacquiao through the mud. We're like, man, this shit ain't even possible. But somehow, some way, he links up with Al Heyman and he's getting a $20 to $25 million payday. Yo, I'm happy for him. He can actually settle his debts. You don't see the normal 45, person entourage around him. You don't see that piece of shit Michael Kantz around him. This is the first check that Pacquiao is getting in what seems to be more than 15 years that he doesn't have to give up 33% to Bob Arum. That feels good. You don't got to give up 10 to 15% to a piece of shit manager like Michael Kantz. That feels great. I can keep the majority of my paycheck. I don't got to give away almost half the shit to people who don't give a fuck about me. And nobody sat there and not at one point ever thought to themselves, what was Arum doing to help Pacquiao alleviate his tax situations? Because it looks like Al Heyman is the type of guy who's willing to take that investment on him. So I'm trying to figure out to myself, you know, why aren't people writing these articles where they talk about Manny Pacquiao being able to do what's right by him, his family, and, you know, take care of a lot of the things that he's messed up in his career. You know, a lot of us like to sit there and we like to drag certain fighters for getting overpaid. And, you know, I often try not to do it because I think if you're going to get paid, you're going to get paid. But this is actually something that's very, very genuine and nice to see for once, is a guy who has put in the work for his career. He's struggling as far as things that have taken wide turns in his career financially, and he's getting an opportunity to alleviate those. Now, if Pacquiao fucks this up, then I can't really speak much upon it. But hey, yeah, I'm not seeing the normal 85 people, you know, in his dressing room walking with him towards the ring. You know, it was interesting to see Boo Boy actually be the first person, you know, giving him instructions. You know, Freddie Rose was just chilling. I don't even think Freddie Rose did much for this camp, but he was just chilling. And how that moves on is, I think it now entices a lot of these other welterweights to be like, yo, there's a lot of money to be made still fighting Manny Pacquiao. It lets brands know, hey, maybe there is some investment that needs to still be made. It lets a lot of these corporate sponsors say, hey, maybe we can kind of forget about him saying that he wants gay people to be dead. So we'll see what happens. As far as the fight, though, I thought Pacquiao fought an excellent fight. I thought he did exactly what he needed to do. He utilized his jab as a rangefinder. He found the left hand. He hurt Broner real bad. And credit to Broner for having a chin, because only Marcos Maidana so far has seemed to understand the ability it is to hit Adrian Broner and to drop him. But for Manny Pacquiao looked good in this fight. I didn't see any aspect of Pacquiao really slowing down much. He looked faster than Broner, and that was something that I didn't think Adrian Broner was betting on, a 40-year-old guy looking faster than him. Pacquiao isn't quite the guy who can use his angles anymore because he's not as fast as he used to be. But as far as getting the job done and being able to use his rhythm, he still gets the job done against guys like Broner. Now, how that, you know, pans out to the rest of the welterweights, we'll see. But for Pacquiao, I thought it was a good performance. I thought it was a better performance compared to, you know, fights like the Jesse Vargas fight and the Jeff Horn fight. I thought he fought, you know, a smart fight. He wasn't trying to sit there and he wasn't trying to like force the action or trying to get into this slug match. He was just content staying at mid-range and just picking Broner off every time he can. Now, Broner did have a couple of bright spots where he, you know, countered over the jab and, you know, he checked up with, you know, with some hooks. But Broner just isn't that active. He was trying to counterpunch Pacquiao in a fucking Philly show. You don't do that shit, bro. And even at the times that he was fighting out of the high guard, he just didn't have the consistency to really do it. And he didn't have the kind of pop on his punches to keep Pacquiao at bay. You know, there were other fighters who have been able to do more against Pacquiao because they have dedicated jabs and they had sharp power. Adrian Broner just isn't that fighter. Adrian Broner is a volume guy who disguises power in his punches based on how often he could throw them. That is how he was whooping everybody's ass at the lower weights, but it doesn't transition to the higher weights because he's just not big enough. He's not big enough and he's not strong enough, and he doesn't take the sport seriously enough to be that kind of guy. You know, I've said for a long time, Adrian Broner treats boxing like it's his side bitch and not his main bitch. And he continues to treat it as boxing as a side bitch, and he's going to get side bitch results. That's plain what it's going to just end up being. And where do both the winners and losers go from here? Manny Pacquiao is going to fight another top welterweight either the end of this year at some point. And it would not shock me if I see Manny Pacquiao either fight the winner between Thurman and Josecito Lopez, or we see him fight the winner between Mikey Garcia and Errol Spence. I think for Manny Pacquiao, those are the two big fights for him. The winners coming out of those fights of Pacquiao versus Keith Thurman fight is a big fight. A Pacquiao versus an Errol Spence fight is a huge fight. If Pacquiao fights even a Sean Porter, that's a big fight. Pacquiao has a lot of options, and I think if he wants to continue to get these kind of purses that he's getting, he has to fight dudes that can talk up a big fight. And I think the Thurman fight is the next fight for him. That's what I believe, in my opinion. Now let's go switch things up a little bit. Let's talk about some heavyweights. Let's talk about Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury. The WBC has once again stepped in to further try to secure this fight. Now, of course, we know the WBC is doing this because they like to get paid. So they've ordered a purse bid for the Wilder Fury rematch. Now, a lot of people are scratching their heads trying to figure out how the fuck could they order a purse bid? Well, the reason why they've ordered a purse bid is because they've been allowed to sanction the fight. Now, when the fight is sanctioned between these two guys, that means that Dominic Brazil is basically going to have to take a backseat. That means that there is no obligation for the WBC to enforce that mandatory challenger. It also means that Dominic Brazil, too, will get paid for sitting his ass down again. So for Wilder versus Fury, that rematch purse bid is set for February 5th. It would be at a 60-40 split in favor of Wilder. And what a purse bid essentially means, for those of you who don't know, is it means that if these fighters cannot come to an agreement by February 5th, there will be an event in which anybody can write their name on a check of a certain purse, and then they put it in a sealed envelope. The commission looks over those sealed envelopes, and then the highest bid will win to secure the fight. They will have to pay the fighters and then work with both teams in order to figure out the location, the judges, the TV rights, so on and so forth. But whoever wins the fight gets ultimately a higher say-so in the logistics of the fight, as long as they agree to pay the two fighters going into the ring. Now, what that means for many people is that everybody's favorite British promoter has been very vocal in saying that he wants to bid on that fight, and that is Eddie Hearn. The problem with it is that I like the idea of Eddie Hearn bidding for this fight. And the reason why I like the idea for Eddie Hearn bidding for this fight is because not only will he have to pay Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder, but them two guys get to talk shit to his face for 10 weeks leading up to that fight. And looking at those press conferences and just seeing the amount of uncomfortableness in Eddie Hearn's face, I'm really excited about that. I think that's something that I look forward to. Now, do I think that this will go to a purse bid? I think there's about a 20% chance it does. I think between Wilder and Fury, both these guys have negotiated their first fight. They both understand what's at stake. They both understand how well they've worked together to get in this fight. So I don't think a rematch is going to essentially be a difficult standpoint. I think a rematch will be negotiated on the same terms as their first fight, but it'll just be held on a higher level because both guys are expected to at least double their revenue this time around. Now, what does it mean for Eddie Hearn? It means that Eddie Hearn is looking once again to try to figure out a way to keep his sort of stranglehold that he once had on the heavyweight division again. Tyson Fury's comeback has really shaken up how he could have, really bullied that division using Anthony Joshua, but now he can't really. So for Eddie Hearn, what has he done along with saying that he's bid for that purse bid? He just decided to put it out in the news that he offered a 60-40 split, which would be in favor of Anthony Joshua, to both Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury. It took Eddie Hearn 7 months to finally offer a percentage of at least some recognitional value. I don't know what promoter thinks this has often been a good deal as far as like negotiation wise. We wanted Wilder versus Joshua since this last summer. We couldn't get that. And then on the flip side, you were only handing out flat fees. Now it's taken you watching two guys elevate themselves to where, the general public isn't buying the shit anymore. Both these guys are more vocal than you or Anthony Joshua. They will have no problem talking to the boxing media, airing things out, letting things known. And that bothers Eddie Hearn because then he can't control the narrative. So it took him 7 to 8 months to finally offer a 60-40 split. Both these guys are like, yo, if our rematch does twice the amount of numbers, fuck that 60-40. I want 50-50. And you honestly can't be upset at them if they want to leave that fight after each other going in wanting 50-50. This means that their fight in America will have grossed as much as a fight as Anthony Joshua in the UK. This also means that there are going to be more businesses in the US wanting to get the winner of this fight in a ring with Anthony Joshua. And like I've been saying for the last 8 months, there is no fucking way that any stadium in the UK can outbid a fucking venue in Vegas. I'm sorry. It's not going to happen. You know, Eddie Hearn took this whole week to come out of left field. He's also throwing shots at Lennox Lewis, who is the most accomplished British heavyweight. Yeah, what's your beef with Lennox Lewis? Not many people have that much beef with Lennox Lewis. And the people who feel a way about Lennox Lewis, they know it's coming from a state of a fighter being this way. But Eddie Hearn, you won't beef with Lennox Lewis. Why? Because he's critical of you? He has every right to be. Lennox Lewis has won the heavyweight title how many times? He's been undisputed heavyweight champion. He was the last true lineal heavyweight champion before Vladimir Klitschko. Like, come on, what's going on here? And especially with Lennox. Lennox avenged all his loss. Lennox Lewis has had a W over every guy that he's fought. He's beaten every guy that he's lost to as well. What seems to be the problem with Lennox Lewis being critical of Anthony Joshua? He's being critical because he wants him to succeed. I don't think it was really hard to point that out. I don't think it was really difficult for us to see through that. You look at it and you are scared of your position when it comes to Lennox Lewis. Why? Because he's critical? That don't make no sense. That don't make no sense at all. And then to make matters worse for Eddie Hearn, you got Dillian White parading around New York this weekend, you know, about to take meetings with Al Heyman. That's interesting. I'm actually more intrigued about that than I am about any of this that's going on in the heavyweight division. Because Dillian White, I've always said this for the time being, I've always thought he was a good stay busy fight for Deontay Wilder. I don't find him to be that special. I don't think he's going to sit there and he's going to, create this kind of noise that makes me want to pick him against, a lot of top heavyweights. Now, I did get it wrong in the Joseph Parker fight. I'm going to give you that. I definitely picked wrong there. But I don't think he's a good opponent for Deontay Wilder. I think Deontay Wilder's going to make easy work out of him. And Eddie Hearn's built, like I said on last week, Eddie Hearn built Dillian White to be this kind of guy who feels like he's worth receiving this, or I'm owed this because I'm this. And then you offer him a deal that he doesn't feel is right, and he kind of, puts you on blast for it. And then he gets on a plane, flies 7 hours to come to New York for Pacquiao fight weekend. And he's like, yo, I'm in New York. Maybe I'll take a meeting with Al Heyman. Maybe I could see what Al Heyman does for me. And, this wouldn't be the first time that an Eddie Hearn guy has done this. James DeGale really got a lot of his high-profile fights and wins when he signed on to Al Heyman. Because Eddie Hearn wasn't doing jack shit for him. So for DeGale, I think that's the first person that Dillian White should really be talking to is James DeGale. Like, hey, what can we do about this? Like, what is the game plan? So, hey, we'll see what happens there. And, of course, Dillian White, he's often said that he doesn't expect to fight Anthony Joshua next. He believes that Darrell Miller is being lined up for it. Now, Anthony Joshua versus Darrell Miller. I said last week in comparison between AJ and Miller and AJ and White, I prefer to watch Anthony Joshua fight Darrell Miller. It happening in New York City is all just, extra, happiness for me. And the reason why is because it allows me to be very hypocritical of Anthony Joshua once again. And it's something I enjoy doing because I enjoy watching people go back on their word a lot in plain sight. Now, I'm going to say if Anthony Joshua does fight Darrell Miller in New York City, the same people for the last 2 years that keep saying the heavyweight division no longer has a presence in the U.S. The heavyweight division is in the U.K. The U.K. is the home of the heavyweight division. Anthony Joshua has blatantly said it makes no sense for him to fight in the U.S. because he is the biggest star in the division and he enjoys fighting at home. I want to see how those people respond to Anthony Joshua if he fights Darrell Miller in New York. Because I know how I'm going to respond. And I'm going to say, what the fuck happened to the UK being the home of the heavyweight division and you preferring to fight in the UK? Why are you fighting in New York against Darrell Miller? What happened to you don't need to fight in the US? That's what I'm looking forward to more than anything. No, I got through a lot there, and it was a string. Now, the next couple of topics are going to just be more about me just rambling on about a lot of bullshit. But I do got to give my stupid nigga of the war of the week to none other than Dougie Fisher of Ring TV, Ring Magazine, however you want to call it. There was once upon a time where I actually did like a lot of the work that Dougie Fisher did. And then I started to read a lot of his pieces, and I was just like, he sounds a little bit like a hater. And then he co-signs for other pieces of shit to actually get a really big, important, presence in boxing. And then that's pretty much when I cut Dougie Fisher off. But this week, Dougie, you get the Stupid Nigga Award of the Week. And the reason why you are a stupid nigga is because you went out of your way. By the way, happy belated birthday to Bernard Hopkins. You went out of your way to tweet that you told Bernard Hopkins that he was the last great fighter. Does Manny Pacquiao not exist? Does Floyd Mayweather not exist? Does Roy Jones not exist? How is Bernard Hopkins the last great fighter when we've had Floyd, Manny, Oscar, Sweet Pea? We've had a lot of people. You had Lennox Lewis. We've had so many great fighters during the Bernard Hopkins era, and now that Bernard Hopkins' career is pretty much over, how could Bernard Hopkins be the last great fighter in the division? Now, I don't want to sit there. I don't want to pull Dougie's, hoe card, because that'll eventually happen on its own. But it just sucks to see what he's turned himself into, Do I have to, like, a lot of people, they really do, like, actually take Dougie Fisher's writing as a really big thing. Let me remind you who this man writes for and why I don't take it seriously. He writes for Golden Boy Promotions because they own the company that dishes out Ring. And now, at what point in time when I look at some of Golden Boy's rankings do I sit there and say to myself, who the fuck is approving of this shit, first of all? Then secondly, anytime there's an issue that comes up with Oscar De La Hoya or Golden Boy, you don't ever really see Dougie talk about it. He, in fact, tries to avoid it. I remember we were talking about Al Heyman and Top Rank, and Dougie said some dumb shit. So Dougie said that, the problem with Al Heyman is when it came to PBC was the network exclusives. And I said, no, it wasn't. That wasn't the problem. The problem is that a lot of these guys were trying to use the Muhammad Ali Act to get Al Heyman to dissolve PBC. And when Golden Boy Promotions went through discovery and it found out that Golden Boy Promotions contracts were some bullshit, they got the cases thrown out. It wasn't until Bob Arum realized that on HBO that Peter Nelson wasn't going to give him dates that he was like, whoa, I need to get the fuck off of here. And I need to figure out how to get on one of these channels that PBC's on. And I got to figure it out fast. So this little lawsuit that we got thrown out, we got to retool that shit. And that's what he did. Dougie, he ain't got no response for that. He, quote unquote, didn't want to talk about that because it didn't matter. And then I find it really, really interesting when it comes to the fact that a lot of the guys who are PBC affiliated fight on these other networks. Not interested in it. He picks and chooses his battles based on the fact of him not wanting to be embarrassed majority of the time. And then I got to realize that this guy works for Ring TV, who put Ronda Rousey on the cover of the most prestigious boxing magazine in the last century. He also failed to make reports around Golden Boy's lawsuit being thrown out. And then caping for these pieces of shit boxing shows, Michael Montero and Steve Kim. Bernard Hopkins is a great fighter. I'm not going to sit there and say he's the last great fighter because look at Floyd, look at Manny, look what they've done. You're going to say you can't sit there and put Bernard Hopkins' accomplishments ahead of those two guys. I'm sorry. Yes, Floyd and Manny have not been undisputed champions at any point in their careers. You know, yes, they're not winning world titles at 48 and 49. Floyd Mayweather has won 5 separate lineal crowns. Floyd Mayweather has won titles in 5 weight classes. He has been a unified lineal champion simultaneously in 2 weight classes. He's got more Hall of Fame fighters on his resume than Bernard Hopkins. Manny Pacquiao has won world titles in 6 weight classes. He's won titles overall in 8 weight classes. He has won double-digit world titles. He also has Hall of Famers, multiple Hall of Famers on his resume. He's also one of the very few men to start his career at the weight that he did to move all the way up to fight at the divisions that he topped out at. Everything that these two guys are doing are some of the most incredible feats. And yes, Bernard Hopkins has done incredible feats, but he's not the last great fighter. So yeah, that was a stupid nigga moment for Dougie Fisher. But it won't be his last. On to brighter news. Canelo versus Jacobs signed for Cinco de Mayo weekend in 2019. This is all news that's great, but at the same time, it's a little bit of a huge elephant in the room that I want to just attend to. I'm gonna move in real quick on this mic, but it looks like Canelo is the one who's carrying the zone for the most part. Yeah. I don't really think that a lot of people and the emphasis that they had about Eddie Hearn in the zone is as brolic as they expected it to. And secondly, my other question is, what promotional side is putting up the bill for this, and whose budget is it coming out of? Because when the zone announced itself in boxing, it was told that they had $1 billion to work with for 8 years. Cool. When they announced deals with Golden Boy, they didn't put out a dollar amount. I still to this day don't know what Golden Boy's budget is for these fights. So until somebody can give me a hard figure, I would assume that $1 billion that they came into it is for everybody who is fighting, not just Eddie Hearn. If Eddie Hearn truly has $1 billion at his disposal, then this is really a bad investment so far based on the fights that he's put on there. But I think that $1 billion truthfully is for everybody who is signed. I don't really think that the $1 billion is solely for one entity in the zone. And John Skipper is the one that is closing out these deals with these fighters. It's not Eddie Hearn. John Skipper was the one that came out and convinced Canelo and Oscar to sign. John Skipper is the one who's reaching out to Sor Rungvisai to sign for the network. These fighters aren't signing to Eddie Hearn. And if I'm Eddie Hearn, I'm starting to sweat a little bit. Yeah, I managed to give myself a little bit of breathing room with this Canelo fight because it allowed me to sign Danny Jacobs to a 3-fight extension. And yeah, it also means that I have to pay him really well because, Al is still his promoter. Ooh, I let that slip up. Al is still his manager. Oh, what's good, Haplotype? But yeah, this Canelo fight with Jacobs is a good fight. I just think that a lot of people need to realize that the zone as a boxing, entity, that budget that they released, I don't think it's solely for Hearn. I don't know what these other guys' budgets are on the zone. So until you give me a hard figure on what Golden Boy's allowed to spend, then it's almost assuming that I have to believe that he's part of Hearn's budget. They're signing their own fighters. The zone is going out of their way to sign up other guys. This isn't Hearn closing out these deals. The stupidest shit I've ever heard was when they said that Canelo signed with Hearn. Why would Canelo sign with Eddie Hearn? That don't make no sense. But the Jacobs signing, it gives Eddie Hearn a little bit more breathing room on the zone. He's got Jacobs for 3 fights. Jacobs has already confirmed that Al is going to be his advisor throughout this deal. He's got the 3 fights signed up. He's re-upped with Matchroom USA. And for Jacobs, and I tweeted this, back in December. I said Danny Jacobs should just wait till January and force the Canelo fight. Because there was nothing else that they could have ever really offered him. You gave him a bunch of lackluster fights on HBO when you did the Matchroom thing. So you had to give him something big to keep him to stay. And I'm happy that they managed to do it with the Canelo fight. This is a really good fight. 55-45 kind of fight, in my opinion. I'd give Canelo the slight edge. But I'm going to be looking forward to breaking that fight down as it gets closer. So with all this happening, how does this kind of transpire to the rest of the division? For Gennady Golovkin, he still hasn't figured out what he's going to do. There were talks of Gennady Golovkin potentially having a deal in set with DAZN. There were also talks of him potentially exercising a $10 million one-fight tune-up deal with Al Heyman to fight on PBC. There's also talks of Bob Arum really wants Gennady Golovkin to fight on ESPN to build up a fight against Zurdo Ramirez. There are a lot of people who still want the services of Gennady Golovkin. Golovkin apparently is still with Tom Loeffler, but I don't believe that. I believe Gennady Golovkin is just having Tom around to give him a sense of comfortability, but I don't ultimately think that Gennady Golovkin is a K2 fighter. He's also under the manager. He's having his wife manage his career. I think for Gennady Golovkin, he's going to do whatever is best for him. I have no problem with it. Ultimately, I think that if he were to fight on a fight-by-fight basis and just pick and choose where he wants to be, that might honestly be the best way that he ends his career, not attaching himself to anybody else. For Demetrius Andrade, he should fight on that Canelo Jacobs undercard, because that is the only way people are going to give a fuck about Demetrius Andrade. That is the only way that people are going to watch Demetrius Andrade. And that is the only way that Demetrius Andrade is really going to get the opportunity to actually get a lot of casual fans to actually want him to fight Canelo or Jacobs, is fighting on that undercard. Andrade is not this top build fighter. He's just not. He's missed that avenue based on how he's been treating his career so far. So yes, I would just take the L and fight on the Canelo versus Jacobs undercard. Put that fight through, and I guarantee you there will be people who want Andrade to fight the winner of the main fight. Who his opponent will be, I don't know. I know there's a lot of people who are expecting Billy Joe Saunders to be given the mandatory challenger back. Hey, if DAZN can make all 4 of those middleweights fight on the same fight card, that would be amazing in my opinion. Who I do have a little bit of worry about is Jamal Charlo. Jamal Charlo is the interim WBC middleweight champ. Now, where does Jamal Charlo go from here? Canelo's fighting Jacobs. You would almost assume that Charlo at some point, he's going to have to get his title shot against the winner. I think whoever comes out of that fight, if it's not going to be a Demetrius Andrade, if it's not going to be a Gennady Golovkin, then it has to be a Jamal Charlo. I don't think anybody else, honestly, you can put ahead of Jamal Charlo that can challenge for the unified middleweight championship of the world. Now, for Charlo, he needs to make sure he keeps himself busy while these guys figure it the fuck out. And what I mean by keeping himself busy is the first thing he should do, in my opinion, is go ahead and try to wax Max Korobov, and this time use a 12-week camp to prepare for it, because I think that's the fight that you need to get out of people's heads the most as possible. And this time is taking a rematch and beating Korobov convincingly. For Andrade, you need to fight on that Canelo undercard. Gennady Golovkin, you can figure it the fuck out. I'm not worried about it. But I digress. Outside of birthdays this week, not only did we have Bernard Hopkins' birthday, but we also had Muhammad Ali's birthday. Muhammad Ali, we lost Ali what seemed like 3 years now? Is it 3 years? Oof. But Muhammad Ali is held in regard as the greatest fighter of all time. Now, even though he still lives on through his daughter Layla Ali, I'm gonna just be correct about it. Y'all overrate Layla Ali. And the reason why I can say that is because, to me, I just watched the greatest female fighter of all time fight, and it's Amanda Serrano. I could put Amanda Serrano's resume up against any female fighter. And it's not because I'm biased towards Puerto Rican fighters, and not because I'm biased against chicks who are from Brooklyn. But Amanda Serrano, 7-weight world champion, still doing this, probably going to go for an 8th. That's the GOAT right there. Sorry. That's the GOAT. But going back to Muhammad Ali, this week, I believe in Louisville, the Louisville airport, the main airport, renamed themselves after it, calling it the Muhammad Ali Airport. I thought that was very noble of them to do. I thought that it was long overdue. Muhammad Ali has done great things to bring attention to the areas that he came from, especially in Louisville while he was still, under his legal name, Cassius Clay, before switching his name to Muhammad Ali. Now, the beauty of Muhammad Ali is that today, in today's world, a lot of people can use revisionist history when it comes to great fighters like Muhammad Ali, especially because even when Ali was still alive, Ali couldn't speak much because of his Parkinson's. So he couldn't really give you the full story of everything. But this motherfucker right here, the one that's talking into the microphone right now, I've done my research on Muhammad Ali. And allow me to sit there and tell all these people who harpoon about fighters taking certain interviews, who harpoon about fighters being vocal, who harpoon about fighters who are not afraid to be themselves and to talk shit to people when people are disrespectful, especially those who have earned it. You all are full of shit with the way y'all praise Muhammad Ali, because the behavior we see today of fighters being outspoken, fighters being bold, fighters being brash, showing personality, shit talking their opponents to no tomorrow, that's everything that Muhammad Ali was back in the 60s and 70s. And guess what? You may love him now, but back then, y'all motherfuckers hated him. And it was sad. Muhammad Ali sat there, he would look at a reporter, and he'd be like, I can't talk to you. You're not black enough for me to talk to you. Imagine Muhammad Ali doing that in today's world, man, they would fucking hate him. But looking back now, they actually, they praise Ali. Like me, I praise Ali because the same attitudes that I see in today's world today, I'm not one of these guys that gets angry about it. I'm not the one who's sitting there trying to call boxing a gentleman's sport. Boxing is very ugly, and at times you got to do a lot of things to stand out. I get that. And that's what I liked about Muhammad Ali now. That's what I like about fighters today. They look at that blueprint. A lot of people didn't like the fact that Muhammad Ali got his title shot so soon against Sonny Liston. They, in fact, had him as the fucking underdog. He won. He won, and he kept winning. They couldn't wait to see him lose against Joe Frazier. There were people who were begging for him to lose against Joe Frazier. There were people who were still begging for him to lose to George Foreman. Looking back on it now, they talk about how classic and amazing these fights were. But these are the same motherfuckers who, in a heartbeat, would have sat there and made slander pieces about Muhammad Ali. The same way they make slander pieces today when fighters exhibit the same kind of behavior. So yes, a lot of y'all are truly pieces of shit. And to end this podcast, we have to talk about one more piece of shit. And that is Sergey Kovalev. Now, this is the dangerous side of the boxing media that I really don't like. And what I mean by this is I'm going to expose a few of y'all in this piece. And the reason why I'm going to expose a few of y'all is because a few of y'all are really, really trash. Like, really trash. So, I wake up, I go out, essentially, to go to the gym at 4:30 a.m. That is the time that Fight Critic wakes up to go to the gym. 4:30 a.m. At 4:30 a.m., put on, my compressions. I get my shorts on. I look for my weightlifting belt. I look for my straps. I take out my phone and I put my headphones on, because initially my whole thought is making sure I have everything. My key card to the gym is like stored on my phone. So Fight Critic gets to the gym after walking 10 minutes, from his apartment to the gym. He goes downstairs to the locker room area to put his jacket away. Now, he takes out his phone, goes to Twitter real quick to check things out, because when I'm in the gym, I'm on Do Not Disturb. I don't like my phone going off. I don't want to get, annoyed by text messages. I'm in it to do what I got to do, pay attention to it. I see a article by Boxing Scene put out at 3:41 a.m. about Sergey Kovalev being arrested on domestic violence charges. Now, in my head, I'm like, ooh, let me read this before my pre-workout kicks in. So I read this, and I'm reading it a little bit more, and it begins to piss me off a little bit more. And I keep reading it more and more, and it keeps pissing me off. Then, a couple hours later, it's now mid-morning, close to the early afternoon, TMZ releases the news. And they give us a little bit more detail. You know, I'm reading it. I'm continuing to be pissed off. I'm not pissed off at what Kovalev did, which, you know, is really bad for me to think about. It's fucked up, but it's come to the point where, like, a lot of me has become very immune to this type of behavior. So whenever I see a fighter in this situation, I'll be like, yo, if they said he did it, he fucking did it, and give him the worst punishment possible. That is my perspective on the matter. It's not that I don't feel bad for the victim. It's that I've been so used to this behavior among fighters that my initial reaction is give him everything that he deserves. If you go through this process and everything lines up, and if it's true, yo, give him whatever you have to do. Give him how many fines, give him many years in jail as possible. Do whatever you need to do. What pisses me off is the fact that this news broke Friday. This happened 6 months ago. In 6 months, nobody thought about this. And TMZ describes it as Kovalev up in Big Bear. He approaches a woman. Mind you, Kovalev is married and has kids. He approaches a woman to try to make an advance on her. She politely declines and she leaves. They're saying that this man stalked her and then punched her, causing her to get nerve damages in her back and head. Fam, what part of the game is this? You followed somebody, stalked them because she didn't want to give you no pussy. You are a married man with kids. As a person who's living in America on a visa, I would suppose. And you are running into trouble with the law. But for some reason, 6 months, no news? You telling me that this happened to Kovalev back in the summer and we didn't know about it? He was allowed to go through with fights with this still there and we don't know about it? Boxing Scene posted an article at 3:41 a.m. knowing that their audience isn't awake for it. Everybody in the media is quiet and not talking about it. Man, I've known every single court date that Adrian Broner has had because of how much boxing media has been up on it. But you telling me nobody knows about Kovalev's felony assault charge? And the way y'all used to put so much into Kovalev being this voice of justice that was just going to bring down Adonis Stevenson. I don't take away anything from Adonis Stevenson. I don't alleviate him of his crimes. But Adonis Stevenson has put the time in for what he did. Granted, you may not agree with the sentence. You may not agree with how it happened. But the man spent a couple years in prison. He spent extended time because he couldn't stay, out of trouble in prison. And then when he came out, he hasn't exhibited any sort of that behavior since. Yet for some reason, Kovalev was supposed to be this voice of reasoning, despite the fact that my man has been caught on multiple occasions being a fucking racist. Let's just be honest about that. Secondly, he has been known for not being dedicated to the sport of boxing. He does not listen to his trainers. He is a drunk. And he has been a shit talker who has then folded under pressure. Why is it that y'all have more disdain for a guy who did the time for his crime, yet on the flip side, you got one of the worst people to embellish the sport and you want to put your stock into them? And then to make matters worse, this happens, nobody talks about it, nothing from Ring Magazine. Boxing Scene posting 6 months later at 3 a.m. in the morning. You know what this all tells me? This all tells me is, had TMZ not gotten the tip on this, the the boxing media was ready to not care about this. Because TMZ was the only ones that's like, oh shit, this happened? Oh, let's put this one out. And the reason why I'm not getting too much on TMZ for putting it out is because TMZ doesn't go out of their way looking for boxing news. That's not their base. TMZ will get a phone call like, hey, did y'all look at the county records? And then they'll put out story. That's usually how they work. But nobody picked it up. Nobody who writes boxing knew about this. So yeah, I am gonna expose boxing media for this foolishness. Boxing Scene posting this article at 3:41 a.m. when their base is sleeping. Then I have to deal with the fact that Chris Mannix, I don't know, I forgot where the fuck he works for, but for years the guy used to only fuck with main events. Isn't it very, very, very convenient? Isn't it convenient that a guy who mostly used to just write pieces solely off main events for the most part, that's how he really got his end game into the boxing landscape. He is more worried about PBC on Fox content. So I call him out. Why are you more concerned about PBC programming on PBC fighters? Where is your story about Kovalev? And you know what this piece of shit tells me? He says, I spent months looking for those records. I was doing my best to try to chase those records, and it just so happened that TMZ dropped it. Even though, like, I didn't have anything concrete. Are you fucking kidding me? Do you not realize that arrests are considered public records? You chase down records that are considered public records? That doesn't make sense. Do you know how stupid you sound? I did a fucking 43-second search on the internet because Chris Mannix said he didn't know what county registered this. There is one county in Big Bear Lake. It is San Bernardino. I found the sheriff's number in 43 seconds. I found the address in an extra 15 seconds. The homies found the fucking charges that were filed in 6 months ago in 4 minutes. It's all on the fucking internet, Chris. And then I have to deal with motherfuckers who want to sit there and they want to compare the aspects to crime. Look, when you're talking about criminals, criminal law, like crime, I'm not talking about civil shit. I'm not talking about getting caught with weed. I'm talking about shit that causes like battery, assault, you know, any sort of domestic violence. That shit, you know, murder, all that shit is considered crime to me. You doing everything in your power to either cause harm to others physically, and it's against the law, that shit is all crime to me. I'm not about to sit there and convict somebody with, you know, a pound of weed on them. What the fuck is a pound of weed compared to somebody who's doing felony assault? What the fuck is the point of me condemning somebody for not paying any taxes compared to somebody who's a fucking murderer? But when you want to talk about assault, murder, attempted murder, manslaughter, all these crimes, I group them shits all together, fam. Them shits is all crime to me. All that shit. You know, racketeering, you know, robbery, armed robbery, all that shit grouped together. That's crime. So don't sit there and try to exonerate this dude by bringing up other fighters and what they've done. Crime is crime. It's fucking crazy how if TMZ doesn't break this story, nobody would have wrote about it. You got people who are fucking horrible that exist that made excuses for themselves. And then this bitch ass nigga Chris Mannix deleted them tweets. I wish I would have screenshotted them shits to show you. For Sergey Kovalev, man, Kovalev, just keeping it real. You got to be the example that gets made out of. You have been flying under the radar and giving way too many passes from these motherfuckers. And you're somebody who's more than likely on a visa here. This ain't holding up too well for you, bro. I'm just going to be honest. But it's your fault. It's definitely your fault. Now, how does this go going into the Almeida Alvarez rematch? Conveniently, because wasn't it Kathy Duva who felt that Marcus Brown's situation meant he could not fight the first fight when Marcus Brown fell into the same trouble as Kovalev? Is Kathy Duva going to keep the same energy here? That's what I want to know. But yeah, that's how I felt about that situation. Of course, thank all of you guys for tuning in. If you guys have questions for next week's podcast, please send all those questions to fightcritic@gmail.com. This has been the Suckapunch podcast. You know what? I think this is episode 5 and not 4. So I'm going to have to rename this one to 5. But that was a podcast for. Make sure you guys check it out on the archive. I'm going to be out of here, and I'm going to leave you guys with the intro to lead me to the outro. Y'all enjoy y'all evening. Enjoy y'all week coming up. Enjoy your MLK Day, especially if you are Black. Remember Doctor for what he did. And also, never, ever, ever let anybody try to tell you that isn't the same pigment as your skin how important Martin Luther King was. And that's me. And I'm out.